Good evening, everyone. It's 5 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call our Utility Service Board meeting to order. As a reminder, the City of Bloomington's utilities mission is to enhance the quality of life in our community by providing safe, sustainable, and high-quality drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater services in a cost-effective manner, promoting public health, economic vitality, and environmental stewardship. As a reminder, if any board member has any personal or financial conflict with any issues or individuals on the agenda, then please be sure to recuse yourself during those portions of the meeting. Our first item on the agenda are petitions and communications. Do we have any petitions and communications from the public? Hi, welcome. If you would, the microphone is just for cats, and so, but if you'd please state your name and identify yourself for us.
My name is Terry Phelps. I live at 3328 Woodhaven Drive, which is on the west side. There is a lift station adjacent to my property. July 9th of 2003, my basement flooded with about 6 inches of sewer water due to the power going out in the neighborhood. I didn't know it at the time, but some years previous to that, they had installed another lift station in a new housing addition down on Jeffries, and that lift station pumps into the Woodhaven lift station. However, they are on two separate power grids. So when we woke up in the morning after the power went out in our neighborhood, woke up to 6 inches of sewer water in our basement, which it was like almost $30,000 the insurance company to clean it up. Since then, it has happened several more times, however, not to the point that it's flooded the basement, because my wife and I, or my daughter and her husband, have scooped it out of the basement shower stall, which is what happened here at this last recent storm. I'm getting too old to do that, and I don't think it should be happening. What you're seeing there is after 2 or 3 times I got tired of calling and complaining about it, so I called the state health department, and you can see his comments highlighted. And it's my understanding that it's supposed to be so it does not discharge. My question is, instead of it discharging into my basement, why can't there be a discharge that would overflow it into the ditch?
Okay.
Can't do that, I don't think, can you?
No.
So why can you use my basement? If you can't discharge it onto the ground and in the ditch, why can you discharge it into my basement?
Sorry, Catherine's your interim director.
What's that?
He didn't hear
have
you.
no intent
Your name.
You might not have any intention of doing it, but it's happening. Okay? In fact, Hector doesn't know it. He's my neighbor. But in 2003, when mine flooded, it flooded his as well. He didn't live there at the time. So something needs to get done and get it rectified. I've done it this last time, the big storm that just went through. We scooped for about 4 hours, hauling buckets, and guess where it got? It got dumped out in my backyard. Sinkhole right there. I don't understand why there can't either be a discharge, overflow put on the lift station so that doesn't come into my house, or there should be a generator there. Because it took the pump truck 4 hours to get there. Now, I understand that was a disaster type deal, but so every time there's a disaster type deal, my basement's gonna get flooded. The next thing is, I'm not sure I could sell that house without telling somebody that's gonna buy it that that's occurred and is potentially gonna occur. So I'm looking for some answers.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, Mr. Phelps. Are there questions from the board to start?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Here for the first part. When was the last time it happened?
When this last storm went through,
Okay. Late July.
Yeah, whatever that was.
In June with the power outage?
Oh, yeah.
That big storm
Right,
in June?
June.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Well,
Right, June.
half the town was out without
Right,
power, but,
yes.
Right.
yeah.
So,
And I understood it took them that long to get there because of that.
Sure.
But that doesn't, it shouldn't ever happen.
yeah, so what happens then when, this only happens when we have power outages?
Yes,
Okay, so power goes out to the lift station.
yes.
Gravity sends it to your shower
As
in your
that lift-
basement.
Yeah, the lift
Water-
station fills
water-
up and it flows backwards.
Water finds the lowest point.
Yes.
to go.
Well, it's not water.
Well, it's that and others, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
We actually have squeezies for that.
yeah.
Okay.
As you quite imagine, it's quite disgusting scooping it out.
It is, I'm sure.
Were there other questions from board members? Just, oh, yes, Amanda.
I just have a question, because the letter, this is the letter you've provided to us.
Yeah, that come from the health department.
So my question, and this predates, I think, most of us on the board. This happened in 2005.
Okay, understand?
What was CBU, or what was Director Murphy's response to you after this in 2005?
None,
There was no response to you?
none.
So since then.
In fact, he walked through the basement of my house as they were doing the initial cleanup, the morning after, and walked through, said absolutely nothing, and left. And I tried to contact him afterwards and got nothing.
And my other question is this the first time staff is hearing about this particular issue?
It's my first time hearing of it yet.
I know that engineering has been aware of this issue and has been
Okay.
exploring it.
Phil Pete in engineering, yeah, Frank let me know that he had heard from the customer earlier in the week, so I started investigating it some. What we've looked into is how the pump control system is set up in the wet well to see when the high water alarm kicks on. We can adjust those settings, and we wanted to confirm if those met our, what our general specifications are, if there's some adjustments that can be made, so we're looking into that. This does come up occasionally, and we've offered the customer a backflow preventer to put on their lateral. I don't know if you have one of those, sir, or
Nobody's
not.
offered that to
Okay.
me.
That's happened before, and we've been offered a backflow preventer to put on their lateral so that it can only flow one direction. That, at a minimum, is a good protection to
So
the
who
customer.
puts that in?
line. We've, in the past, we've provided the fixture, and then the homeowners put it in, or had it put
And
in.
why should I go through that expense?
Um,
That
Not
should
to,
be-
not to get too much back and forth, but that's on the private system. It's on the private line, so
So why can't it be put in the main line?
then it would prevent the rest of the flow.
So then he needs to do it too? And all the neighbors up the street need to do it? I'm sorry, that should be on the city to do. Why should I have to pay for that? And you can talk about adjusting all those sensors and all you want, that does nothing when the power goes out.
Does that has backup generator? Did that generator fail at that site?
This one doesn't have one, so most of these are equipped with a plug-in to where we could take
Okay.
transport a movable generator to those, and we're in the process of setting up some of our other lift stations with plug-in. We know, if you're familiar with the lift station project that we're working on right now, there's some full replacements and some that are just getting electrical control panel upgrades that come with a direct connect to a generator. And so I think the goal is, and our intent is, to be able to have mobile generators to take to these stations when the power's out, where they have a direct connect.
So you're gonna have enough mobile generators for every lift station in town?
I guess that's getting into the operations side, but I think we want to have some to where we can go move those around and use the Vector truck in certain occasions. We have a lot of different options.
We
of
still got a time, so
addressing-
how long is it gonna take to get there before it happens?
I think that would, we're not certain
You're not giving me
because
any assurances it's not gonna
I-
continue to happen.
I certainly understand. Jim?
this isn't acceptable, I'm sorry. If you lived in a house where this happened, you wouldn't accept it either. It's not acceptable, and the city should do something about it. I don't have the answer, I'm not an engineer, but this shouldn't be happening to people's basements, and nor should he have to pay for the solution. So I don't have the solution for you, but I'm asking that the solution be found, and I'm asking that it be fixed as quickly as possible and without cost to the residents. I don't know if my fellow board members agree or not, but something has to be done.
I think we need to consider our policies that are in place regarding whoever is responsible for a backflow preventer on a private system. And if we are in the practice of providing those fixtures, then we should do that. And if that's in our policies, we should do that. If we need to re-examine our policies, we should do that. But I think this has just come to us this week. We are responding as best we can. But I would suggest that we would need a few days at least to issue a policy position of what we've done historically. And if there's a need to change that, then we should examine that. But we have a set of rules that we need to stick by for right now, for tonight.
I'm not demanding an answer right
Yeah.
now, but
And-
on the flip side of that, then maybe you should reimburse my insurance company the 25 or 30,000 that they paid out that it flooded it. I think you putting the backflow thing in would be a lot cheaper than that 25 or 30,000.
Agreed. Not to say,
I
I have any
understand.
authority
I'm
to
just
pay
throwing-
that,
I'm
but
throwing talking
I agree with the
points out.
logic, yes.
I'm just throwing talking points out.
Are there any other comments from the board? Yes, Kirk.
I know I copied you on this. We're talking about how we might talk about this larger issue of generator systems and power failure protocols and SOPs, because we saw, we heard about the issues in June, and even in our own building here, we heard that the generator was overheating because it wasn't. And when we had a situation where the Monroe Water Plant was without power for 28 hours, we were running on generator power down there. If you think about all of our lift stations, this is a problem, because when you have a catastrophic problem like we had in June, it's hard to be prepared to provide backup power to that many lift stations for that long a period of time. And even if we're watching the monitors, logistically moving a bunch of generators around on trucks with crews is gonna be a challenge as well. It's gonna be like whack-a-mole.
Especially when you can't get around town due to all the trees that were down.
Right, so at any rate, we've talked about I think we're working on a date for that, right, Frank? For our planning subcommittee to look at the bigger issue of this. And at least from the generator and power failure perspective, where we need to be, and that may be that we need to look at the whole backup power protocols for the whole system. Yeah. So the big picture strategically, we've identified this because the weather hit us with that in June, and we want to do the right things. You've got a smaller issue, bigger for you, but it's truly unacceptable, and we need to get it
Well,
fixed.
bigger for me and my neighbor and the next one.
Exactly.
If
And
I-
it's true.
If the backflow thing gets put in my lateral, then that's gonna make it go to his. If he puts it in his, it's gonna make it go to the next one. Because his house is only slightly higher than, maybe a foot or two grade higher than mine.
Can I ask Phil to maybe clarify, is that true? Explain how this works a little more.
Yeah, so Phil P. in Engineering, so you have the lift station with the wet well, all the gravity sewer comes down to that, and then it goes deeper than the gravity sewer to the pump. And so if that backs up, over the invert of the pipe, the elevation of the pipe coming in, it will what we call the hydraulic grade line, it will just keep rising. And so that's when we have too much I in our system, we have sanitary sewer overflows because it comes all the way to the top of the manhole. Similarly, it's gonna back up in that main till it finds the next point to where it can release, which is the next lateral. Yeah.
So would the solution be doing that for, like, how many houses would we be talking about?
Yeah, there's,
Probably
I
that's
mean-
just one neighborhood where there's many, not that everybody should have the what did you call it? I'm sorry. Backflow preventer.
yeah.
Okay.
Well,
You can look at that with the, sorry.
I don't think there would be that many houses, because when you go across the street and up the street, those houses are all 8 to 10 feet above the grade of my house and the lift station.
Yeah, it can be determined based on the elevation of the finished floor and the elevation of the sewer. You can start to see where that hydraulic grade line is gonna be and which ones it would affect.
Amanda.
So, again, I'm going back to this 2005 letter. No response other than Director Murphy coming out, seeing it, not giving you a solution at that point.
Correct.
So, since 2005, you haven't had any issues except for this one that has happened with this?
Oh, no.
No, there've been several?
Yeah,
Okay.
there've been several.
And there's been no communication between you and CBU staff?
Nope.
Is it wrong?
I've called in for the pump, to get the pump truck out, which they've done. It takes taken time, because most of the time the power goes out, it's in the evening.
Sure,
know.
or on a weekend, or a
Yeah,
holiday.
Or a weekend, or whatever. And frankly, I didn't throw it out there, but, I retired a couple years ago, and I'd like to travel, but I can't do it. I can't do it because whenever the power goes out, my house could get flooded. And what we do right now, when we do go for a day or two, we got neighbors that have my cell phone because the neighbors across the street are on the same grid as the lift station, but I'm not on the same grid as the lift station. So I've got them calling me when their power goes out.
So, to that end, is, by you coming here today, can we open up the conversation and either come back with some sort of a solution that either staff and Mr. Phelps can agree on, or if it's something that does have to come back to the board as Jeff and as Jeff shared, in terms of looking at our policy? I mean, does that seem reasonable?
Yes, that seems reasonable, and I think it seems like the backflow preventer is a short-term solution, but really we need to be looking at the long-term solution at the lift station, and that is what I think engineering is gonna set out to do.
It would also be good to know the extent of this problem throughout the city and how many
Yeah.
other lift
Yeah,
stations are
right.
affected, how
Absolutely.
many customers associated with those lift stations, so we can make sure that our policy is backed by proper funding and staff to take care of what needs to be taken care of.
Can we also figure out like an estimate of what it would cost to install the backflow preventer? Like,
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, that's
I have no
pretty easy
idea.
for us.
I know, we'll get the number so that we have an idea of what it is.
I would guess you're talking about a backhoe and a couple of men and
They'll get an
half a
estimate.
day,
Yeah.
three-quarter
To clarify,
day.
you would like an estimate on how much it would cost CBU to do that work?
Or privately. I mean,
Yeah.
how much
Okay.
would it
What
cost
would it
him?
cost to
How
do
much would
this,
it cost
to fix
Right.
it?
CBU?
Yeah.
I think both estimates would be good.
Yeah, it would probably cost less for CBU to do it than
Right.
it to be privately installed.
Any other questions or comments?
It's just a bigger problem of it, when the power goes out,
Right.
if it's not going in his basement,
Going in.
all over the city,
Right.
when we have an extended outage like that, what happens, as Phil mentioned, that the pits fill up, and then eventually it's running out on the ground or to the nearest low point. And we've got a spill problem that we shouldn't have either. That's the problem with all these lift stations, which is a bigger issue, but if you think about it, you know, those of us who lived here a long time, we don't have long-term power outages. You know, it's a couple of hours in the city, and it's back on again. And Duke knows where to help us. But here in this past year and a half really is where we've seen these big problems. And if we're gonna continue to have these kind of storms, we're gonna have to adjust. So we don't have these environmental cleanups, whether it's somebody's basement or the lowest point in a neighborhood. So we got some work to do. And we appreciate you bringing that to us.
I appreciate you listening to me.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yes, and we're sorry that you've been dealing with this issue for 20 years, and hopefully we'll have a solution for you soon. So we know our staff will report back to us and be in communication with you about this. So thank you for coming today.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
People didn't respond appropriately.
Yeah.
What's that?
Apologies that it wasn't responded appropriately to before.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Dan.
Are there any other public comments? Hearing none, our next item on the agenda is appeal of denial of the denial of sewer connection. Okay. And, okay. Do we have? Yes, this would be your up. Okay.
My name is Mike Carmen, attorney representing the appellant as such. I'm only going to speak on a specific point for a couple minutes, and Steve Smith has got much more of the history and background on the issue of sewer extension or not, and we'll talk about that. It's because I'm the attorney that I get to go first on this issue. I don't know what the future is about even your rule, because on the sewer extension, it's the waiver protest or the petition for voluntary annexation. And I don't know what the value of the future is on these waivers protest. I think that's yet to be determined. I suspect they're of little value to you, given court decisions and what's happening. I realize appeals can happen and things yet, but those are really in question as to what to do with waivers of protest, whether they serve a purpose for you. The problem with voluntary extension, or annexation rather, voluntary annexation is the property doesn't qualify in so many cases. And this is going to be one of those. It's not going to be the 1/8 contiguous boundary issue. And so there's a different way to handle that, and actually addresses some of the issues that courts talked about on these waivers, is in lieu of the waiver, or in addition to, if you still want the waiver, we can craft a covenant, a deed covenant, that it would be enforceable. It would get recorded, gets in the chain of title as a sewer extension service agreement, but imposed on the deed as a covenant that in basic terms would allow for or compel the property owner at the time when the facts are right that the property is eligible for a voluntary annexation petition, because it meets the almost always it's going to be the 1/8 contiguous boundary problem. And that when it does meet that the then property owner, whoever it may be, because that could be next year, it could be 20 years from now, they're required to file the voluntary annexation petition. I find that is much more value to it, because that never expires. There's no court issue about these are too old, or whether they record not, or they will have been recorded under my plan on this. But they, as a deed covenant, they never expire. That will always be there. And while 1 and 2 of these at a time may not do you much good, but you start to build the dominoes so that at some future date, you've collected these obligations for voluntary annexation from properties that otherwise don't qualify and they can't file it. But those get collected over time, and when the dominoes are right, they all fall and they all get implemented. And so that is my suggestion to deal with. It's some variation of that to have to work out specific terms. But I could see that working on the issue of what you're going to require from the petitioner in the way of either a waiver protest or a voluntary annexation, because at the moment, neither one of those really work for you and give you anything. But I think there's a way to make it work for you in the future when the time is right. And with that, Steve, or Tracy?
My name's Tracy Fox. I'm one of the leaders at Westside Community Church. Just want to take a moment just to say thanks for just listening to our appeal. I don't want to bore you with a lot of details, but I thought my role in this would just be to introduce who we are and why we're asking for sewer. We are a growing congregation on the west side. We started a small group having a Bible study at the Cloverleaf on the west side. After hours, they kept it open for us to meet. And it didn't take long to realize that there was a need for a church congregation to meet the needs of the community on the west side. So we were a part of Sherwood Oaks East at the time, and they charged a group of us, 85 of us, to go and explore that. And I don't know if you've ever explored what God may have for you in life. He will usually surprise you. So our congregation is growing. And so this is our 10th. We started our 10th year meeting at the Ambets at the gathering hall there. Along about 4 years ago, the interest to find a permanent space for us to meet got to be really important. So we asked some volunteers, Steve Smith, long-standing engineer locally here. He volunteered to be on our team as a search committee. Where can we build a church? So we looked at 30 properties, some open ground, farm fields, Coca-Cola bottling company, MC Sports, all these different places that maybe could be converted to a church. And we landed on the 28-acre piece that we have now purchased from Trinity Church on Enright Road. It fits kind of where we are. It's just up the street. So Steve was helping us. So, well, you would be cost prohibitive to use that piece of ground because of this or that, or you'll never get sewer, or there's not a big enough water source, all those different things. And he helped us get to the point where we were ready to make a decision. So we agreed on an offer, and we purchased that land. I think it closed a year ago in April for $1 million. So we've anteed up, our congregation, and we've been in this 4-year campaign to raise funds, and we're doing pretty well on that. So, this is not just a hypothetical. This is something that we feel God is charging us and challenging us to do. The piece of land, we started at the beginning, and, can we even put a church there? There's a church already there, Trinity Church. So we went down this road of conditional use. Can we put a church there when we found out that you can put a church anywhere. It's a permitted use. So we learned a lot along the way. And now we have spent, since that time, a sizable amount of money developing a building plan that's ready to go to the state. We have a site plan that Smith Design Group has developed that's sitting at the planning department waiting on approval for a sewer connection or other options. So we're losing valuable time to move dirt, get site work done, get ready to put up a steel structure that we're ready to order today. And we need this will serve letter is really our stumbling block. So if we have that, then all these next to these pieces can start taking place. I appreciate Mike and his assistance. He's helped us, purchase the land and close on the land. For some reason, it doesn't show on the GIS, but anyway, we do own it. We've owned it for over a year, and so I just appreciate your consideration in the matter, because one way or the other, Lord willing, we're going to build a building on that piece of property. So, thanks for your time, Steve.
For the record, Steve Smith, and we're here with this appeal because I think this is the kind of situation appeals were built for. We have a whole series of unique items here that you don't have on most cases. I saw a case 2 weeks ago. It was very informative for me to watch that case or read about it. because that had different characteristics, and you talked about precedents and stuff like that. But I think in this case, we have a unique set of circumstances that makes us a little bit different. And you have my letter, I saw, I think, in your packet, if you printed it out. But think back with me to it was the spring of 2020 when we had located this particular site, and I was on the committee and tasked with a number of things, including assurance of sewer. And we were looking at sewer at all the different sites that we were looking at, but this is the one we were focusing in on. So I was looking at sanitary sewer because it's very important. And in the spring of 2020, the rules were not clear at all. All that I could see on the outside is what most things were being turned down. And I didn't know why. I didn't know what was going on. I retired a couple years before, so I wasn't very active. But even my staff back at the office couldn't answer my questions as to could you get sewer or not, and where could you get it. So I began my process of trying to find out. And I don't remember why, but the first person I talked to was John Zodi at the city. And I think partially because I saw it was a political question, not an engineering question. It was a political question, it was an annex question, so I talked to John Zodi. And the feedback I got there, and I put quotations in my notes because I thought it was important as to what he said. But basically he said, we're approving for adjacent properties only. Okay, adjacent properties. But he said, that's just one part of it. He sent me on. So I went to Alex Crowley next, who I worked with many times over the years, Alex Crowley. And he said, well, non-residential. And again, this is the spring of 2020. Non-residential, no problem. I said, okay, good. So I'm adjacent on Enright Road. We were buying property from Trinity, which is adjacent. Trinity's on the sewer, so we could be on the sewer. And we're non-residential. So it looks, we're looking good. But I thought, well, the next thing I need to do is go to Vic, go to CBU. And I went these routes because you really couldn't go to the mayor's office and get an answer. In hindsight, maybe the legal department was where I should have gone. I'm not sure. But anyway, I took my next route as an engineer to CBU, to Vic. And you can see the email I sent to him. It was very descriptive of what we're trying to do. We were buying the land, put the church on. Next to the Trinity, we put sewer in for Trinity a decade ago or so. We wanted to do the same thing. Annexation had everything up in the air. Can we get sewer? Will we be delayed by annexation? So that was my question. I thought it was pretty clear. And I also thought his answer was pretty clear. If you read his email on the top, it says the annexation will not delay your project. So I thought I asked for sewer, and I thought he said yes. I did not get a will serve letter. Will serve letters were just in their infancy then for something like this. I didn't even think about it. I sent an email, I got a response, said you got sewer, with the condition that you talk to engineering about how you hook it on. But I've been doing these projects for decades here, and that's always the case. Always have to go to engineering. What size pipe, where did we connect, those kind of things. So I felt good. I'd gone through 3 department heads and got good response on all 3 relative to our project. But, well, let me keep going. Then this is the spring of 2022. So all through 2022, all through 2023, I think those parameters pretty much held intact. But sometime in the spring of 24, things changed. That's when we needed a will serve letter, and everything was scrutinized, whether it was residential or not residential, commercial, and there was a question of whether it could be annexed. So suddenly it got complicated in the spring of 24, and my commitment from Vic no longer met those criteria that suddenly came into play in 24. Because I think your policy that you adopted was in August of 22. Now this is in June of 22 when I got my email from Vic, new policy in August of 22, but I didn't see any implementation of that policy. It pretty much stayed the same as it had through, again, 22, 23, until the spring of 24. And suddenly, while the church has been raising money, purchased property, hired an architect, hired an engineer, went through all this stuff, goes downtown to get the sewer permit, and we don't meet the criteria now because the criteria is different than when we applied. But we certainly relied on that, correctly or incorrectly. We did rely on it. So the time has passed. If we'd applied a couple months earlier, we probably would have got a permit. But the change in policy just policy internal, not rules, just changing policy, kicked us out. So we don't have our approval now. Let me see if anything else. So, like I say, I think I asked Vic, I got a response that said yes. We proceeded, you changed the policy and the rules, or the city did, somebody did. I'm not quite sure where all that happens, but it changed, and we kind of get left out. Now, we can put a septic in. I don't think that's a good solution. It's not a good solution for us. It's not a good solution for the community. It's just not the right way to go, but it can be done. Our investment would not be lost, but it's kind of misguided. And again, I think this series of happenings is unique, and again, that's what the appeal process is for. So that's why we're here asking to overrule the denial and allow us to hook to the sewer. And I can answer questions.
Thank you for coming today, all of you. First, we'll start with other questions from the board for our petitioners. Yes.
So I have first of all, thank you very much for bringing this to our attention and for providing such great details on the history of the project. That's very helpful to us. This project has been denied by the mayor's, you're saying this has been denied already by the mayor's office?
By this, I'm not sure. We applied at CBU, and we get the denial letter from CBU, but I think it goes up internally. I'm not sure. I can't answer that.
There you are. I didn't think Chris was here, but he was hiding. Yeah, Chris, could you tell us
Yes.
what the background is here on this, the city's perspective?
Yes, I don't remember when the letter was issued, but a letter was issued stating that there wouldn't be an opportunity to connect, and that letter was issued by the Utilities Department. It got vetted by Corporation Counsel and the Deputy Mayor, and with communication with Kat Zager and Nancy Axum to discuss the situation and to look at Mr. Kelson's email, and it was decided at that time that CBU would deny their request to connect. Yes.
I mean, a situation like this, when the rules change, is there not some thought about grandfathering things that have been?
Yes, and that's what we did. We considered in '24, with the new administration and the way that the new administration wants to handle extensions outside of the city, it was decided that anybody who had received a will serve letter we would honor those will serve letters, and they would still be in a position where they could connect. In speaking with Mr. Kelson and reviewing the email that was sent, we didn't have to try and guess what Mr. Kelson meant when he sent that email. He told us what it meant, and that was that he did not give them a will serve. In that email, he says very clearly that annexation is not going to stop your project, but you still need to talk with engineering and get permission to connect. That's the step where you need to get the will serve. They still needed to get that will serve letter, and they did not. So, having reviewed the policy that's going on right now with regards to allowing people who received will serves to go ahead and connect, we viewed this one as a situation where a will serve was not given. And so the decision was made not to connect. Mr. Kelson, I believe, is on the line, who can tell you what he understood his email to mean. He can verify what I have said. Yes.
And we're not arguing about the will serve letter. We didn't get a will serve letter. We didn't think about a will serve letter. Vic didn't say, well, it looks good, but get a will serve letter. We just got what I thought was the answer, yes, and we stopped. And in hindsight, now, with the current policy, if I'd had a will serve, but if I'd known that then, I'd have got it, but I didn't know that then. But we didn't get one, so we just don't have a will serve letter.
Molly?
Did you talk to the engineering department at CBU at that time? Like,
No, but
according to the
I
email?
read the email, and I've gotten a lot of emails like that that said, work out the engineering details is what it says. And that's standard. And we already knew what it would be because we'd done the church next door before. So the next process would have been the design and come in with,
Okay.
with
Well, it
what
says-
size pipe and where it would be, how big a pump, these kind of things. But we were far away from that.
Yeah, because it says you need to work with them to get approval.
Yes,
so-
yeah, to get approval. To get approval of the detailed design, usually.
For the service
Engineering
connection.
decides how it's done, not if it's done. This policy is if it's done, engineering is how it's done, was my understanding. Certainly, that's the message I got. And I'm not new at this. I've done it a long time, and that's the message, because that's the way we do it. Can we get sewer? Yes. Work it out with engineering. But it wasn't work out if you can get sewer, it's work out how you hook it up, and that's why we proceeded, because that's what we believed.
Okay.
And that's, again, why I'm saying this is a unique set of circumstances. We didn't dot all the i's and cross all the t's that are now deemed necessary, but we certainly made a good faith effort.
And this has been your timeline for the last 2 years. You've been working toward doing all the steps that you would typically do. And then when you were ready for the engineering approval, that's when you reached out,
Yes, because
correct?
we needed to be sure we had sewer, because then we did the fundraising and bring the group together, buy the property, detailed design of the connection, and then beginning a dialogue with engineering at that time about how we hook on. Again, not if we hook on. But I understand now that the will serve, again, is the policy now, but I didn't understand that at the time. I got the email that I thought said yes. And I think if you read it, I think you'd say the same thing. It says you
disagree
got
with
sewer.
that. I don't think it says yes.
And I would like Mr. Kelson to have an opportunity to
Yes.
speak. He's online and has his hand raised, I believe.
Okay. Welcome, Vic.
I'm sorry, without Frank here to operate this thing, I can't make it work. So, the idea of a will serve letter is not a new idea. That when I joined CBU in 2016, the need for a will serve letter on lots of different kinds of projects that happened outside city limits, that requirement was nothing new. The director does not issue will serve letters. Those come from the people in the engineering group that process requests for new service. The new will serve letter is typically happens on a project like, well, there are lots of things that require them. One that leaps to mind is any kind of type of project that's going to be a subdivision of a property, or lots and lots of things that happen outside city limits require them. The purpose of the will serve letter is to confirm to the developer that their project will not be denied sewer. And in the eras of the that we're talking about between 2020 and 2024, the utility went through a couple of steps in its approach to new development outside the city. And the policy at the time that Mr. Smith reached out to me was that we were not allowing new connections or new extensions for property or projects that would increase population density. So that would be apartment buildings, subdivisions for residential development, and so forth. We specifically, and all this was communicated clearly through policy documents and press releases that we sent at the time, that we were not going to deny commercial, institutional, industrial, and those kinds of extensions, only ones that were intended for high-density residential development. So when Mr. Smith asked me about this, you can see my analysis on this particular item was very short. It's a commercial property, so as a commercial property, the annexation question really didn't matter. well, it didn't in 2022. And I recommended to him that he talk to the engineering department. At that time, had they talked to the engineering department, the engineering department would have done the initial analysis for the will serve letter. And the will serve letter is during the development of the will serve letter, there are things looked at like, is there a pipe large enough to receive the waste? Is a lift station going to be required? Just a lot of those kinds of things, because the will serve letter is that during that review, they're also looking at questions like, is it simply even feasible to serve the property? That's not an analysis that I did. I simply said, if annexation doesn't matter to you, go for it, is all I was saying. At that time, there were other projects going on with developers throughout Monroe County requesting will serve letters outside the city. Nancy Axum and I handled dozens of these. And in every case, if it was a commercial property, I would say it's not going to be held up by annexation. And in some cases, or most cases, they went ahead and did the projects. But the letter I sent was not intended. I think the text in the letter is very clear that my email was clearly not a will serve letter. It was simply a statement that the annexation policy in force at the time wasn't going to affect that policy, or wasn't going to affect that project. I assumed actually that the project had been built by now. I really haven't been out that way. I'm happy to answer any questions. By the way, for the record, I'm Vic Kelson, former director of CBU.
Do any board members have any questions for Vic? Kirk?
Yeah, Vic, this is Kirk. If, in your opinion, if the petitioner had gone to engineering and gotten the, requested the will serve with the current, with the rules that were in place or the practice in place at that time, and met all of the engineering requirements, do you think the engineering department would have granted that will serve?
Well, subject to the technical review, that would be up to them based on the technical review, but that's a hypothetical that I can't really say whether it would have been approved or it wouldn't have been approved because it wasn't requested and the analysis wasn't done.
Okay, I was thinking in terms of the technical perspective of it, and I know you can't answer that at this point, but that was my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions for Vic? Yes, Jim.
Could the answer to Kirk's question be answered now?
It's my understanding that city policy wouldn't allow it, but if
I'm not asking about.
Certainly, it could be reviewed from a technical perspective, certainly.
Okay. I mean, in my opinion, I'd be favorable to doing that, to have the analysis done now, and if it met the requirements.
Other questions for Vic at this time? Okay. Yes, Kirk?
This is contiguous to the city limits? No. It's not. How far away is it?
Well, we have 30 acres, and there's another 80 acres, I think, behind us that the church owns, the other church of Trinity, and it abuts a little sliver on Curry Pike, but it's not anywhere near the 180.
And that's how Trinity got its connection?
Nope, Trinity just, this was a decade or so ago. Trinity, I thought, didn't have to be in the city.
Okay.
And Grandview School and the neighborhood there are all on as well?
Yeah, the Trinity goes into the subdivision sewer, school sewer, Cars Park, the fairgrounds, that's all come back. So that's all city, so we'd be hooking into that same system.
And you're contiguous to Trinity?
Yes. We were part of Trinity until we bought it.
Yeah, until you bought it.
And we are contiguous to Trinity. And again, I'm not saying we did have a will serve, it's just that we didn't think we needed a will serve then, and it was a policy later, as you point out, and if we applied now, we probably would be approved because we designed it and submitted it, but then we got a no, so it stopped everything.
So if you hadn't, if the property hadn't been divided and it was still one parcel, it'd still be contiguous.
Well,
Well, but the sliver that allowed them to do it in the first place?
not contiguous to
City.
sewer, yes. Not to the city, though.
Okay.
Is that what-
All
No,
right.
not to the city. No,
Got it.
not to
Thank
the
you.
city. Not to the city. But if we'd applied, I believe, before this change in policy this spring, then we would have been approved as we thought, you know? It would have been a question of where we hook in and which line we connect to, not if, but how. And we could, we have applied with that information now, I think. I think we've applied, because that's how we got denied. But it probably has not been reviewed. Phil's standing here, so.
Yeah, I thought about offering the technical review. We did take a look at it, Phil P. in engineering, and so there are some challenges with this property, but we do believe there are some options to get them sewer. It's not as simple as a spot in town where you have gravity sewer right in front of the property where they can just add their lateral and connect. The gravity sewer is about 1,500 feet away, so they would have to use a pressure force main and pump to the existing gravity sewer. One of the challenges with that is the county will not allow a private lateral to be within the public right-of-way parallel to the street. So you can cross it perpendicular, but you can't just run 1,500 feet down the public right-of-way with that line. So there's a few challenges with that, but there are ways to do it. They could get an easement off some other properties around there. I think we actually haven't seen their intent. We haven't seen something submitted where they want to connect. But I believe it was indicated they were going to try to connect at Trinity's current line.
Yes, that was original.
Okay, so you cannot share a lateral, and that's their lateral, so there would have to be some indication where we as the CBU might have to take over that low-pressure force main after the connection with the Trinity line to where it runs to the force main. At that point, we just need to make sure that it's sized appropriately and that any downstream gravity sewer or pump station has the capacity, as we haven't seen the flow that are projected for the church yet.
So what we end up with is probably the same thing that Trinity did. Trinity put a small pump in, 1.5-inch diameter main going down the road to the city sewer. We'd put our pump in and put a small diameter main going down on private property to the sewer. Same thing as we did 15 years ago with Trinity. But we thought maybe we could connect up, but we can't, so. But it's the same model, it's just parallel.
Other questions? Amanda and then Jen.
So if we were to, I guess, would we vote to support the denial, or would we vote to overturn the denial? If we did vote to overturn the denial, where would it end? I mean, do we have the authority to make this change, or does it go above CBU board?
The current policy in place for our rules and regulations is at section 24, which requires that, or states that no properties outside of the city limits that cannot voluntarily annex will be able to connect to our sewer system. There is one option, and that is to take the matter to the director and ask for the director to exercise discretion to allow a connection. But that policy was written at a time when waivers might have still had some effect. The most recent decisions being handed down in the litigation that's going on, and it's still ongoing, is making those waivers pretty much worthless. And so our policies have to be considered and probably revised yet again. At the moment, the administration's policy is to not allow connections, period, unless a waiver had been provided. And in this case, unless a will serve letter had been provided, and in this case, a will serve letter had not been provided. If this board decides that it wants to allow this particular property to connect, even though no will serve was issued, you open up Pandora's box again, and we have to start considering everybody who asks, who doesn't have a will serve, because they've all got good arguments for why they'd like to connect to our sewer. But for reasons I don't know, because it's above my pay grade, there are lots of people in the county who do not want to become annexed. And so it makes it a very difficult political loggerheads to determine just how we move forward at this time. This is a pretty tricky situation to be in. The policy that's been handed down is pretty nice and bright line. If you don't have a will serve, you don't get to connect. If you cannot voluntarily annex, you do not get to connect. I really like Mr. Carmen's idea. I think it does have some merit, but it requires us to take a good look at it and see how it might work and what it might do to our current sanitary sewer system. So it's not something that I think we can just jump into and say yes to at the moment. And I would certainly like an opportunity to speak with Corporation Counsel about it and have her consider it along with the mayor's office. All that having been said, and with all great consideration to my colleague, the administrative policy right now is that this property should not connect, and staff's recommendation and legal department's recommendation is to deny the appeal. Yes?
Given the date of the request, July 29th, would you have, I mean, because we could table this, you could go back to corporate counsel and have that discussion. I don't know if it's something that could get done in 2 weeks, but is there a 30-day period that this board has to decide the decision about the appeal of the denial, or is it a longer period?
With permission from those who seek that appeal, if they wished to allow us more time to consider those things, I think that we would have that we would have the luxury of that time.
What's the time period?
I'd have to look. I don't recall what that is.
I think it's either 30 or 60 days. I mean, just off the top of my head,
Yeah,
I'm sure staff
I'd hate to
would remember.
venture the guess and be wrong.
It sounds like there's other uncertainties as well, including not having the capacity projection from the church and engineering being able to do any sort of solid analysis of options. That's something else perhaps the petitioner could provide to help this process along if we were to delay it.
Well,
Delay
the delay likely would be to see if Mr. Carmen's suggestions have enough merit for the administration to maybe open up some sort of consideration to that effect, but
Sure, but concurrently.
at the moment,
Concurrently, that, engineering could
could
see
be
if-
looking at things a little
yeah,
more closely,
to be able
sure,
to move things along efficiently.
if they've got, the ability to do that. But I am at this point, I have no other authority but to suggest to this board that the legal department and the staff of CBU are recommending a denial. And then it's up to the board to decide what it wants to do. Thank you.
I'll just say again that it seems to me like this is a request for special treatment when something wasn't followed up on, and now they're out of time. So I support denying it. I don't think we need to make special allowances for this at this time. No, that's just.
Well, I think this was brought forward by Steve Smith primarily on the basis of unique circumstances. I mean, Chris is right that a lot of people would want to be attached, but I'm not sure they have the same sort of circumstances. They, in preparing for this, they communicated not with one city official, not with two city officials, but with 3 city officials. And in reading their responses, I might well have concluded that it sounds okay. And we've now been told if he'd asked for that engineering to be done, the serve notice, it probably would have been done because it was feasible. And, I think they've operated in a way that was proper and correct. And I'm not supporting this because I want to see it done generally. It has nothing to do with the policy. It has to do with these unique circumstances and the way that the petitioner has operated. And so I'm supportive of the petitioner.
Any other comments? Amanda?
I guess my other comment is to, not only to this group, but to the group that came before us, and I'm sure there are going to be other groups coming before us in the future. If there isn't a system for us to really truly look at a situation with with our waivers, and if we are constantly just going to say deny, 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 then our roles are ridiculous, if you ask me. And I support with what Jim is saying. There is ample documentation here that had we not been in this situation with the annexation, things would have been moving along just fine and dandy. I truly, truly believe that. I support the idea too of us trying to figure out some sort of documentation, contract, or whatnot that Mike Harmon had suggested too. So if there is any, if we move forward with this, can we continue to can we table this so that we can get the other things answered, or do we need to just put this for a vote? I'm still not clear on what we should be considering. Unless if somebody else can.
I think it's a yes or a no vote.
Okay.
Just because the petitioner needs to move forward with their project one way or the other. With the ruling with the annexation, which is still potentially, I guess, go through the appeals court. I would hate that 6 months from now, our policy does change and this would have been approved and our petitioner has moved forward with a septic system because that's, the position we put them in tonight, where in 6 months we could have a different policy with that we would have approved it. As other board members have mentioned, I believe the documentation supports the appeal. And while I certainly have heard what Vic has said and his explanation for it, I can see that when I hear him say that. When I just look at the text and have read it, since we were sent the packet last week, that I read it as the petitioner read it. And knowing the petitioner's longstanding in the community and working with the CBU on projects, I feel like they move forward in a good faith effort to implement the project as they would any other project working with the CBU. So while I would be in favor to issue a connection anyway, I feel like this grants the merits of the appeal are the evidence is provided here for that. So
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Is the will serve letter a new thing at the time?
That actually is a
Because
question I had for
this
Chris.
person
What is the
has a-
difference in 24? But what's
What
the
is the
difference in
difference what?
2024? Mr. Smith mentioned several times, from August 22 and 23, things were flowing, and then hit 24 and something has changed.
The
Are
only
you aware?
something that changed is that the mayor's office and corporation council decided that we were not going to be connecting on commercial properties. There used to be this niche where commercial might be okay, dependent on other factors. When you're looking at the factors in section 24, one of them is whether you are commercial or not, okay? And currently, given the status of litigation, it has been advised that through the mayor's office that nothing's going to be connected at the moment while this litigation is pending, except for those that did receive a will serve. Will serves are not new. They've been around since at least 2016. And so the only thing that changed was whether we're going to continue to allow commercials to connect. Or
And-
other types, commercial like that, the ones that don't expand or increase capacity,
Certainly. And,
density.
so when that was enforced, with the new administration, then how do we notify potential customers of that who could have been planning projects and think they also have, I guess they wouldn't have the will serve.
Right.
But they anticipate maybe they could receive one, or no, because that would be a different, because of the litigation with the annexation, I guess that wouldn't matter. But say like a church that,
I guess I don't know
I
where
guess
you're
I'm
going
not
right
going,
now.
I don't
Can
either.
I
I'll
ask
just,
a follow-up?
well, I do, but I'm not using my words, so, Molly.
So I guess my question would be for the petitioner of why, if you've done projects before, I would think you would know that you would need a will serve. So I'm wondering why you did not proceed to get that.
Well, the will serve normally is done if you're going through a planning process at the County Plan Commission. That's where it came from. The County Plan Commission would require a will serve letter from all the different utilities. CBU didn't start the will serve. They did it, but they started in response to planning petitions. They never wanted to do will serves. So the will serves evolved because you couldn't get a subdivision approved through county planning without a will serve from all the utilities. So that's how it all started. And it really wasn't that big of a deal until this spring, when that criteria was added, that we're gonna honor only the will serves. Well, the will serve just wasn't a big deal if you weren't seeking some kind of county planning approval or city planning approval. If it's just a building permit, you wait till the end. You don't need to get it. See what I mean? It wasn't like you get a will serve to be sure if there was no issue. It wasn't until May or April of this year that they said, well, the will serve is what we're gonna hang our hat on. But there was no notice given. Nobody knew that that's what they were gonna do. And again, you only got the will serve if you were going to a planning commission or something like that. That's why it was created. And CBU didn't want to do will serves.
Well, it seems like 2 years is a long time to get the email from Vic and then follow up on this. So
Well, up until that change in policy in April or May, we wouldn't have had any problem. If we'd done it in January of this year, it would have gone right through. And suddenly the will serve letter became important long after the fact, and nobody was worried about it. I mean, we had all this correspondence, we just moved along, and if we'd applied a few months earlier, we wouldn't be here today. But the will serve was injected into the process in a way that it had never been used before. And we had no notice of that. We would have applied if we knew, but nobody knew.
Matt.
Thank you. Appreciate the folks being here, sharing on this. I have a few questions and concerns, I guess. One, how I think about and approach a lot of the issues here on the board are either through analogs in the other things we deal with at the city or thinking in a broader policy context. And one is like the, development ordinances generally and zoning and planning. And when policy changes happen, when we make a policy change by adopting a new zoning map, changing zoning code, someone's intention about what they wanted to do with the property that might be affected by that change, doesn't grandfather them to override the new policy. And so I think when it comes to like local government setting policy, like that's just a possibility with a new administration in response to, legislation and decisions that are coming from the courts. So I think like, while sympathetic, I'm not sure that's a good basis for an appeal. I also have some concerns about what we would be willing to accept. I mean, Mr. Kelson's email, well, first of all, Mr. Zodi and Mr. Crowley, I mean, they didn't have authority to make those decisions. To the extent that Mr. Kelson did, he didn't make that decision. He said, in fact, the opposite. He said, as always, you should work to get approval. There wasn't an approval given. And so there's kind of an assumption among these three directors that there would be an approval at some future point. But again, we encounter this thing elsewhere. We might have planning staff telling someone working on a property development that they should be able to do X or Y, and they get to the Plan Commission, and the Plan Commission makes its decision based on its policies and expertise. So it's not, I don't know if it's a sound basis for the decision. And again, there might be plenty of other folks that have also worked in a similar kind of state of reliance short of approvals. And I think it's a little uncertain what we're opening up. Also, if the board is to substitute its judgment for the directors and by extension the mayor by way of section 24.2, it seems like there may not be adequate information at this time to do that. So the rare circumstances that would allow extension of sewer service currently under our current rules and regs require, the remonstrance waiver essentially, which may be worthless, we don't know. And a consideration of this like 6-factor test, which includes commercial, residential. It also includes things like capacity to accept additional flow, whether the request will require any further extension of utility-owned sanitary sewer infrastructure. It sounded like both of those may be involved in some meaningful way. And so the director has the discretion to assess that factor test and make an approval, but did not. And so if the board is going to make that approval on the same factor test, which is I think what sound judgment would be to exercise appeal authority, it seems like we actually need to know those questions. Like we need to better understand those factors. So that's another concern. And then just finally with the idea of using covenants instead of waivers or requiring voluntary annexation, I think it's an interesting idea. I think I'm like happy for it to be explored from a policy perspective. I also have concerns. I mean, it's also unconstitutional for the state to invalidate contracts, but they have attempted to do so, and it seems like somehow that might hold up. So I don't have a lot of faith or confidence in any mechanism we might put into place that has some future action being taken on the basis of contracts or otherwise. So I would urge us to exercise caution in thinking that's a fix, given state action, invalidating existing contracts. So that's it. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Madam President, if I could
Yes.
please, you had made a comment that you thought maybe this was simply a yes or no vote, and I was going to walk right down the path that ex officio Flaherty was walking down, which is to remind you all that at this point in time, the director did not use discretion, did not go through A, B, C, D, E, and F, did not consider those factors, but simply denied the request for connection. Based upon the fact that we don't have the valid petition for voluntary annexation, it can't happen, and based upon these new policies in place by the administration with regards to whether or not there will be connections. So if there's going to be a vote tonight, that vote should be whether or not to, if you're going to grant the appeal, it would then be to ask the director to use the director's discretion to go through those factors and determine whether a connection should occur. And I don't believe this board has the authority at this time just to say that a connection is going to occur. And so, yeah, I'm piggybacking on Mr. Flaherty at this time.
May I ask a follow-up question?
And I'm also going to say that if anybody was involved in the litigation that's a member of this board, who either was a party to the litigation or was acting as a witness against the city, that they should consider themselves having a conflict and step out of the vote and abstain. So, thank you. Yes, question.
So may I ask a question then? And I will abstain from the vote then at that time since I was a witness in the litigation.
You can
Is
ask
it
a question,
okay.
sure.
So if the board would vote for, to approve the appeal and send it back to the director to look through those items, then if the director denied that, then would that be the final answer? Or
No, there would be another appeal
There would be another
process
appeal
if the
process.
if the
Okay,
church
that's-
wished. And then you'd be in a situation where you're discussing whether or not the discretion was properly
Sure.
used, right? So, but right
Right.
now, it's simply a matter of discussing the denial itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered because going back to Amanda's point, what's the purpose of the board if there's not opportunities to make decisions from the board standpoint? So, yes, Molly.
I'll just make one more. I understand what you said about the, what is it called? The, not the waiver,
Appeals
but,
process?
no, the, yeah, the will serve. However, like Phil's point and other points about the site needing to be examined for even if sewer could be connected, I don't understand why that was postponed for 2 years, because that may never have been a yes answer. So,
Yeah, I can answer that.
Sure.
A lot of reasons. One, we did the Trinity Church project a few years ago, and this is mirror image of that. It sits next to it. The force main would go the same place. It's all done the same way. And this is a church. This is hundreds of people coming together, trying to herd in the same direction, so it takes longer for the project. There was fundraising, land purchase, and then the design process is the same thing, bring everybody back together. So we didn't feel the need to work ahead on the sewer connection because we thought it was a non-issue. But we could have, but the whole process just takes time. As a matter of fact, I think 2 years is pretty commendable on the part of the church to actually make the decision and be at this point ready to draw building permits today. But we could have accelerated that, but there was never a reason. Under the policies and procedures of the utility, we were home free. And we knew the details because we just did the same thing on the adjacent property. And Phil can probably tell you that. He may have been here when we did that with Trinity. It's a little pump, pressure line. So there wasn't a lot of new stuff. It was pretty straightforward.
Yes, Jeff.
Chris, can you just speak to the need for council to evaluate this deed covenant alternative prior to any decision being made by the board, or could that be done in conjunction with the director's consideration and discretionary handling of this?
Well, we do have a catch-all for any and all other factors in that section 24 with regards to the things that the director should consider in determining and exercising that discretion. And I suspect that that sort of a legal document that would be binding on the property, assuming again that, because currently I think that it would be binding, but I don't know whether legislation might come along later that would somehow try to even frustrate that type of an effort. But at the moment, that type of a consideration could be something that that if the party that's seeking the connection was willing to sign that kind of a deed, a document that would covenant and restrict the use of the property to mandate an annexation, that would be a factor I think that could be considered by the director in exercising his or her discretion. Yes.
And do we know the time frame for a director's decision if we were to?
I don't know.
Okay.
No.
Well, I'd like to know these things before I
Yeah.
vote on, one, what our time frame is for making a decision, two, how much time the director gets after that. I think those are legitimate questions
How
before we
much
make a
time the
decision.
director gets to exercise that discretion, I don't
Yes.
think there is a time frame for that. So if the
okay.
board were to decide to deny the appeal tonight, and if then, and I would assume the church would ask for the director to consider a connection using that discretion, there would be time to make those evaluations.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Got an option to table this for a couple of weeks while our council gets an opportunity to take a look at this restrictive covenant option. That might be a good way to move forward in a policy perspective for some of these other situations. And that's true, you know, we've got all the legislative and Supreme Court or court history on how all that's not worked out so well in the past few years, but
If I
Yeah.
may, on behalf of the church on its application, if there's an actual timeline or deadline by which you need to make a decision, we would waive that to afford you the opportunity to table this for 30 days or whatever to the next meeting or something, so that they have the opportunity to do some further work on these questions that have been raised. But if your concern on tabling it is that you're under some rule-based deadline, we would, on petition, would certainly waive that deadline to allow that.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, I've been pretty hard asked about making exceptions, whether it's customer refunds or policy, then the board has been pretty hard-assed about it, and as we should be. This petition was brought forth on the basis of it being unique in some circumstances. If we have no discretion to make exceptions to policy, then why are we having the meeting? We should just say, that's our policy, forget it. As I said before, this one has specific, unique circumstances. I think the petitioners have done everything correctly. They've done it. If Mr. Carmen's idea strikes us as good, we can take that up, and we should take it up. But I'm talking about this specific petition and whether we should ask the director for her discretion and support us. So I move that we support the
Sewer cost, how's that?
we support the petitioner's request.
And I will recuse from voting. All in favor of supporting the petitioner's request for sewer connection, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
You might want to do a.
Okay, we'll do a,
Would you do it by roll call, please?
Sure.
yeah, roll call, please. Do a, Molly. Stewart, okay. Frank's just gonna call the roll.
No.
Yes.
Recuse myself.
Yes.
Yes? It's 3 to
So
3.
with 3 to 3, what does that mean?
Perfect, right?
Yeah.
Motion didn't carry, that's what that means.
Wasn't denied either.
It wasn't denied either.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't understand why the president can't vote
I was a witness in the litigation against annexation.
in the past,
With this case, yes, in the past.
not active.
I mean, the ruling was sent out by the judge last week.
Yeah, so it's over.
Yes.
It seems odd that you're not voting, if that's cases
I
behind
was
this.
asked, our city attorney asked that anyone involved in.
Consider whether you have a conflict, and if so, to recuse, or not to recuse, but to abstain.
It's very subjective.
I believe that I've been against that policy from when we signed it into place, August of '22. And I think that if it would have been, obviously, if I would have voted, it would have carried. I think in fairness to the petitioner, but I think if the vote was to allow our interim director to review it, then our interim director should be able to review it as a good faith effort to our community members and customers. I understand the motion didn't carry, but that would be my request as the board president.
Well, I would just like to note that my initial suggestion was to table this, and Kirk made the same suggestion, and we came up with a different motion, and that's a shame.
I didn't hear you make a motion.
I didn't make a motion.
Okay.
I said it was my suggestion. and
Okay.
then- Yeah, so,
Since the motion failed, do we have a new motion on the table?
yeah, I would make the motion that we table this for 2 weeks until our next meeting. Allow. Okay, well, I'd make sorry, if I'm allowed to, I would make a new motion. If I'm allowed to? A new motion to consider this at our next meeting. I don't know that we even need one. We could just make the motion at the next meeting. But in the meantime, if corporate counsel would be able to consider the impact and validity of this deed covenant alternative, that would be useful. If there's any reason that staff would take up the analysis in any meaningful way prior to that for 2 weeks, then maybe that should happen as well. But that's a discretionary directive from, yeah. So, But that was my initial suggestion.
I don't know, I don't know what that,
Can-
did you make a motion?
I
or
didn't.
You're just making
I-
comments?
No, I didn't. I just said,
Sorry.
I guess we just do it next meeting.
Option I had is the petitioner could appeal again, right?
No.
Well, from a procedural perspective, the motion didn't fail either. I mean, I guess it did.
It did
Uh,
fail,
Yeah,
it did
by
not-
failing
it
to
did
carry.
not
Well, can we
Yeah.
take it up at the next meeting, Chris?
I think that a different motion can be made, and I think that a motion to have the director consider the factors under section 24, and make a decision based upon those discretionary factors, it sets this wheel back in motion again. So I think that you could make that motion, and I don't think that that would frustrate Robert's rules.
Well, yeah, I would like to see that happen. So I make a motion that the director consider the 6 criteria along with the other catch-all criteria, or if that is one of the 6. At the same time, you know, it would be good for you guys to do your thing, but that's not part of the motion. So the motion is for the director to consider this project under those criteria. And
So, I'm sorry, I'm gonna be persnickety. I think
Sure.
it is a motion to deny the appeal, but to have the board, the director look at the discretionary factors under section 24.
I didn't hear him say deny the appeal.
no,
So the appeal's already denied,
Right.
There was no action.
So
It
now
didn't
Well-
pass.
It just didn't
or-
pass.
You moved to approve the appeal and
yeah.
it failed, so
Yeah.
there hasn't been a decision on the appeal yet. So you either have to approve the appeal or deny the appeal, and that's why I was suggesting, if you want the director to review the factors and exercise discretion, you would need to deny the appeal.
And the way the motion was presented, it was to approve the appeal, which is why it has not been denied, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, we would be happy with a continuance for 2 weeks to rediscuss
Okay.
with this work done in the meantime.
Yes.
and we don't need a motion to do that.
I don't know.
I don't think we do. I mean, we could get an opinion from the director about those criteria prior to our next meeting and have an understanding of which way this project would go, and if there's a need to, you know, you guys would understand if it's, you know, what the outcome of those things would be, if you can provide the information about the capacity. Maybe they need more time than 2 weeks, but certainly we could, if you provided that information, we could make a decision in 2 weeks that would continue the process without a hard no.
I'm not a Robert's Rule of Order guy, but I've seen situations where there's no action, it automatically is continued. That alone continues it if you don't do anything. I don't know. Weren't you a Robert's guy?
Okay. Yes, Matt.
I have 2 questions. One, are we sure that the appeal hasn't failed? Regardless of the wording, my assumption, whether you said approved or denied, my assumption would be if you don't have, the appeal was submitted, if a majority did not vote in favor, then it fails, would be my understanding. And so it has failed. But the second question is, couldn't anyone on the prevailing side, which was failure, so the 3 no votes, bring this back under a motion to reconsider at a future meeting? So if those things are both true, it seems like the will of Board Member Amon might be that there's a separate motion to ask the director to consider the 6-factor test to inform possible future board action on a motion to reconsider the appeal. Like, did that all track, and is that? Yes. I'm not, okay. Okay.
Okay, well,
Thank
if
you.
we need a motion to
Yes.
do that, then I would make that motion that the director consider the 6 criteria.
I second that motion.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, board members. Thank you, petitioners, Mr. Wheeler, everybody else.
No,
Yes.
you know, Chris, I really I'm glad that you expressed some support for this concept of restrictive covenant. I think it'd be great if Chris could explore that with Corporation Counsel and see how that might work with a restrictive covenant that gives us a little bit of discretion here and still fulfills this long-term desire to have city annexation aligned with water and sewer service. It'd be good to get an idea about that, because it is a good option. There's lots of examples of restrictive covenants that go with properties, and it does work. So I think it might be a good option for us. Could you take a look? Come back to us?
Okay, thank you. All right, okay, thank you. Moving on with our agenda, we have approval of our minutes from our previous meeting on July 29th. Are there any questions, corrections? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have approval of the claims. First, we have standard invoices in the amount of $1,204,360.01. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll start with Amanda because she's ready, and then we'll Kirk. That's okay.
Page 7, I just have a question about this South Central Community Action Program, which why do we pay administrative fees to them?
So the way it's set up is we have our criteria for our customer support program that we do, and they do all of the administrative work, the vetting of the income level, making sure that they meet all the requirements, and so for that service they get was it 5%? I think it was 5% of the amount that we allocated to that.
Perfect,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. Kirk?
Yeah, my question was on page 2, for Winston Thomas demolition, the $484,000. I know we've studied that project a lot, but I just wanted to get a reminder about what all this includes. How much demo are we doing, and what kind of remediation or any site prep or whatever? Thanks.
Phil Peden Engineering, that was a $1.9 million project with a alternate deduct of about $800,000, which we didn't accept. So we're looking at about $1.1 million project there, and they still got about $400,000 left on the contract after one of the change orders we had. So they're moving along. What that was all the buildings that were on the south side of the property were removed except for one that we were trying to restore and keep with our new service center plan. And then the trickling basin, which was the large concrete basin, that was removed and then backfilled. So there was a lot of material, if any of you made it down there, that other city departments had left that was deemed surplus and not usable anymore, and they removed that as well from the site.
So how far along are we with the completion where we needed to be?
Yeah, they're really close. So they've done majority of the grading, they've removed the basin, and so we're near the finish line. Yeah.
So then this amount just fulfills the remainder of the contract. Is this the last piece?
No, there's a $400,000 invoice that still hasn't been sent to us, a pay
Okay.
application. Yeah,
Great.
and they do have. We did extend their time with the change order due to some other circumstances, so they did get it extended towards the end of the year. But they've moved along really well, progressed. It's pretty far along.
Thanks.
While you're up there, the piles of mixed fill that were concerned, were they addressed in any way by this contract?
In the basin,
Adjacent to it, the piles of mixed fill that were of concern that we
So-
talked about previously?
yeah, so those were, we found the reports from those, so there was nothing hazardous in those materials. They could be used on site, and so they were used. And then any fill that was used on there where our new service center is proposed, they're doing compaction tests to make sure those meet all the testing, so they can be used as good base foundation.
Good news. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the standard invoices? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have utility bills in the amount of $40,744.88. Are there any questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next are the wire transfers in the amount of $569,638.12. Are there any questions? I'd just like to make a comment that our credit card fees this month are $27,353.74. There are no other questions or comments. Then do we have a motion to approve? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Finally, we have customer refunds in the amount of $83,755.58. Are there any questions? Yes.
I just have a question about, I'm sitting here trying to look this up here, this core SVA Bloomington Walnut that they overpaid connection costs.
They paid the invoice twice, and so we're.
And what is
refunding.
this core SVA?
It's a company that is building the apartment complex on North Walnut, I believe,
Oh.
just south of the bypass.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure it's just cut off from our packet, but it has in there like wastewater, water, and then no column. It doesn't add up to the total amount.
Oh, I
And
didn't-
so I just want to confirm.
I think what happened is you'll see that the text is carrying over on the $80,000 one, so we get that fixed.
Okay, but it is $80,000.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, we have approval of our consent agenda totaling $18,256. Interim Director Catherine Zager.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Zager, Assistant Director for Environmental and Interim Director. And I'm presenting tonight's consent agenda totaling $18,256. The first contract is with Williams Tree Company LLC for $4,500 for tree removal at Dillman Plant. Second is with BL Anderson Company Inc. for $3,520 for the annual flow meter calibration at Monroe Plant. Then we have Health and Industries Inc. for $2,146 for the repair of two backflow devices at Monroe Plant. Next, we have Accredited Safety Solutions Inc. for $4,500 for a rigging and safety training course. Then Harrell Fish Inc. for $3,590 for the installation of an expansion tank and boiler room at the service center. Is there any member who wishes to consider one or more of these items individually? Hearing none, if there is no opposition, these items will be approved as recommended by staff. Hearing no opposition, the consent agenda is approved.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have request for approval of change order number 1 with E&B Paving LLC for Arlington Road to Stone Lake Drive water main relocation. Jane Fleeg. Welcome.
Jane Fleeg for the record. This is my happy change order. This gets us money back.
Oh.
This contract was for the relocation of the water main for that state highway project that's adding the ramp at Arlington Road. We had bid it as unit prices and have now come back with actual quantities. And as it turns out, we get to hold back $70,886.06, which is the amount of the change order, so that their final payment will be $192,806.94. So it's just totaling out the project.
Super. Thank you. Questions for Jane? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Stay on up there, Jane, with request approval of change order number 1 with Milestone Contractors LP for Clear Creek Culvert reconstruction from Dunn Street to Indiana Avenue.
And of course, it disappeared on me.
That happens.
This is my unhappy change order.
Oh. Thanks.
Just so you know. I was here, I think it was 2 meetings ago, to talk about the change order with our consultant for this project, based on historic conditions of this final phase of the Clear Creek project. We have been required to do a lot more than we planned on. Particularly, we have been asked to, or have been told to, reuse some of the existing limestone that was in the arch and in the head wall and in the creek beds. Those were carefully set aside. This week, or last week, the sub-consultant came and picked those up, and they'll take them to their mill them as veneer, bring them back to the project, and install them on the new head wall. That work alone was an increase in cost of $272,921.44. Obviously, it was an additional scope of work, and in order to get their subcontractor on board, pretty much at the last minute, it requires another 84 days added to the contract. We also, in discussions with the contractor, worked to accelerate the project as much as feasible, as much as possible. They have been working long days, they've been working weekends, but it comes with a cost. So the additional part of this change order is $144,559.33 to accelerate it to the point where 1 lane of traffic will be open by August 29th. And that was the soonest that it could be based on the issuance of the permit, allowing them to begin this work. So we have a total change order amount of $281,020.05. That takes into account the fact that we have already a $150,000 contingency in the project, of which we'll use $136,460.72 of. And then we get reimbursed by IU for that same amount. We are splitting that cost, basically, because the project extends onto IU's property. It extends the culvert beyond, or to the edge of the Franklin Hall building, which will help protect their building foundation, and it will be much more efficient hydraulically for this to be realigned. As you remember, it had that funky curve in it, which is not good hydraulically. So we will be splitting that cost, the total cost of the $272,000 with IU. So we will get a reimbursement from them. So the total change order amount, like I said, is $281,020.05. This now changes their contract price to $3,929,638.05 and adds 84 days. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Amanda.
Okay, so I just want to be really clear on this. We're now, for this historic culvert that the state is asking us, or has mandated.
It's federal. It's federally mandated, yes.
Has been mandated, has now cost almost $300,000. What did we already have into it prior to that?
About $50,000 for the consultant. Mhm.
Okay, so more than $250,000, 1/3 of a million, I guess, is that the correct, I don't know what.
The total change was 400 and, what was that?
431.
Yes, thank you.
431. So almost $500,000 put into this with no money from the federal government, no money from the state to assist with a designation that they've deemed appropriate for a culvert section, which is, give me an idea, there's 2 doors over there. Is it about the size of that? A little larger?
Our new culvert is 22 feet wide. The existing was 16 feet wide.
Okay, okay. And we could have done this without this designation, correct? I mean, that's how we were going down that path until this was discovered.
Yes, every other phase of this project, this is the last phase of the Clear Creek project, every other phase has had some limestone arches in them and within that were removed. because they were undersized, but nobody could see them. They were not designated historically. This one unfortunately is in the historic district and could be seen by people, and the state historic preservation organization or office weighed in on that, and
I understand we have to do what we have to do, but I just hope that someone in social media decides that they're gonna take a gazillion pictures there and this historic culvert. I'm sorry, everybody, I'm just shaking my head. I apologize, but,
oh no.
and thank you to and
I'm with you.
Jane, this project, we've run into hiccup after hiccup after hiccup. And I just publicly want to commend you, all of the staff that have worked on it, the people at IU that have worked on this. It is something that is critical for the infrastructure of our city. And for everybody that we are going to displace during this extraordinarily busy time for our community and our campus, we apologize. But this is the type of stuff that's holding it. I mean, this really bothers me. And we would have met the deadline, and I have a feeling that people are gonna blame CBU and people are gonna blame the city, and it's gonna be shame on you for leaving this project open when those businesses need the customers, when we need it for community transport and families that are coming to this town. I apologize. I mean, I know it's not our place, but I think I apologize for this happening, but it is beyond our control, and I'm grateful that you guys have the patience to deal with this, because I certainly do not. So.
And I know we've prepared a press release. I don't know exactly when it's set to go out. We were vetting it today, so.
Yeah, we just sent our press release to the Office of the Mayor, so it's up to their release schedule, so it should be out soon.
Well, again, thank you to all of the staff members involved with this project, because this, on both the IU and CBU and the city, I mean, the city has also been involved too. I should give credit to them as well. We've just run into hiccup after hiccup after hiccup, but you know what? That's what we do. We pick up the pieces and we make sure that it's done right and it's done well, and I thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we have requests for approval of the 2025 budget recommendation.
Hi,
Hello.
Catherine Zager, Interim Director and Assistant Director of Environmental. I am bringing to you a request for approval of the 2025 budget recommendation, so a recommendation to council for our 2025 budget. We have a very long presentation, but I am going to try to do my best to make it succinct and clear. All right. Oh, and just to note before we get into this, you have the budget memo in front of you. It looks substantially different. We were given the template and have made adjustments to make it fit the template for the Office of the Mayor, so, and the Controller. So apologies for it being a bit last minute.
Also, the updated version of the budget memo is in a separate document than the packet. There were some last minute changes. It's uploaded, like it's on your pads. You'll just need to change the document.
Yeah.
It's already open. You'll just need to select the,
They're relatively small changes.
yeah.
Just,
does
but yes, the updated version is in your packet or your computer.
I think just go there.
No, it's on those. It's
Oh, there it is.
uploaded. Yeah, just click on, I'll show you.
Thank you, Frank.
It'd be faster if you just touch, oh, you can't touch the button. This? Okay, thank you. Okay, good, thank you. Okay. Yes, thank you. Maybe just hit Kirk's. Since you're there.
Yeah, we're just, I think some folks are maybe
I think go ahead and begin.
using the bathroom.
Yes.
All right,
Mhm.
okay.
Yes.
Okay. No. All right. Here is I present to you the 2025 utilities budget. All right, here is our mission. Oh, right. Here is our mission. Yeah. Okay. Here's our mission that was read at the beginning of the meeting. Our mission guides our goals and our budget. Next slide. All right, we currently have a total staff of, I believe, 199 members. We are split into our 6 divisions. Thank you. And yes. All right, some successes from the past year. We awarded almost $10,000 in customer assistance. We awarded $46,000 to the Residential Stormwater Grant Program. We have contributed $25,000 to both the Lake Monroe Water Fund and the Friends of Lake Monroe. And we are still planning on installing kiosks both here at the service center and hopefully at the bus depot downtown in the last quarter of 2024. These will help customers pay their bills. For storm, we are completing a street sweeping routing plan that will be finished by the end of the year, and we will have a fully implemented street sweeping program. We also dredged 20 plus years of accumulated sediment at Miller Showers recently. And we are on track to complete the Clear Creek Culvert reconstruction, also sometimes known as the Hidden River Project, with the final phase connecting to IU's campus being done this year, marking the end of a 25-year project. In water, we have completed a long-term water supply resiliency plan, and we have done several improvements at the Monroe Water Treatment Plant, including replacing filter media, under-drain system, and intake bar screens. We've designed the chemical feed line and tank upgrades, and new belt press. In sewer, we've upgraded 13 lift stations and have fully replaced 2 of those. We also replaced electrical lines and the influent bar screen at Dillman and rehabilitated the belt press at Blucher. Some of the challenges and needs that we faced and continue to face are supply chain issues. There are still lead times that are 6 months to a year for supplies. We've had significant price increases and that have even led to contractual contingencies to handle mid-project price increases, which we are relatively new. Generally, projects take longer and they're more costly to complete. Also, in this past year, we've had a transition in leadership, which has reprioritized some of the goals from last year's budget. Some goals, such as the sewer sniffing hound, we have decided to turn in a different direction. We've also had some water fund challenges. So our last rate increase was in 2021. And our operating expenses and the project costs, they've significantly increased and they were not used to build the last rate case. So now we are closely managing our cash balances for the water fund and have a great need for the 2025 rate case. Some opportunities we're looking forward to. We're going to continue our partnership with SCCAP to improve our financial assistance program. There are a lot of opportunities. We'll talk more about that in one of our goals. We also are excited to have a full asset inventory at Monroe Water Treatment Plant. Currently, Wessler's performing that. I think this is going to lead to a better prioritized CIP for Monroe so that we can really target these super essential projects, so that hopefully we're not caught off guard. We're also excited to implement Title 13. We hope that this will create a clearer review process here at CBU And it allows us to have bonds for our stormwater infrastructure, including bioretention facilities. We are also working on moving to text notifications for our customers so that we can communicate important updates, just like we do with the boil water advisories, except now we can expand that to notifications such as shutoffs or what's the other notification? Oh, high use alerts.
Yes, excellent.
All right, and now I will introduce our 2025 goals. We have 9 of them. So our first goal is to improve and reimagine our customer assistance program. Our second is to contribute to local nonprofits that protect and preserve our critical water resources. Third, we will upgrade and replace critical water infrastructure. Fourth, we will keep up with the costs of operating and maintaining excellent water service. And then fifth, we will improve wastewater services at Dillman Wastewater Treatment Plant. Our sixth goal is to upgrade instrumentation equipment and to replace essential pumps at the Blucher Wastewater Treatment Plant. Seventh, we will improve the capacity and efficiency of wastewater collection systems. And then 8 and 9 are stormwater goals. We will increase the resiliency to large stormwater events and improve stormwater quality through nature-based solutions. Ninth, we are going to inventory and assess our existing and rehabilitate our critical stormwater infrastructure. Here is our revenue budget summary. The revenue budget summary is also reflective of it is also our budget. So for water, do you have a slide that is the next one? There are details for the percent changes for each of these, but in total, our budget is $53,570,000. I just didn't want to get ahead of other slides. Yes, there are percentages in the memo and also on future slides. I just didn't want to get ahead of myself. All right, and here is our department budget by fund. We separated it out. Category 1, correct me if I'm wrong, Category 1 is personnel, 2 is supplies, 3 is E&R, and then 4 is our sinking fund.
4 is what? I'm sorry.
Our sinking funds?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here are our budget notes. So for the water budget, personnel went up 6.7%. Reasons for this include that we have included some initial estimates for our compensations, the CRO compensation study that the city is doing. We plan on implementing the CRO study along with the Civil City. We have included overtime, which was not historically included in the budget. We talked with the controller, and this seemed like the right decision. We've also moved some expenses. So this should be larger, but we have moved some expenses in personnel that were not captured. They were being captured in water, but now they are being captured in storm. These are for people and positions who serve all 3 utilities. We are now splitting them instead of 40-60. We are splitting them 35-65, 5% to stormwater. For supplies, this has increased 29.9%. We are using some estimates for chemicals that I think are a bit more accurate. And then we are using current trends to estimate main break costs. And then other services is down 13.3%. And this is mostly because in 2024, we had 2 years of the interdepartmental budgeted, and now we only have 1. And sewer. So personnel in sewer is more reflective, I think, of the changes in personnel we'll see with the CRO study, and including overtime. So that was up 33.6%. Supplies are up 41.4%. Again, we're trying to get more accurate estimates for chemical usage and are using current trends for maintenance and repairs. For other services, that is down 24%. again, we're only budgeting for 1 year of interdepartmental payments. In storm, our personnel is up 11.9%. This includes the compensation study impact and also the increased staffing that is being moved to storm from water. Supplies are up 145.6%. This can be explained because many of the storm projects that we're doing, they're not in the bonds. We're paying through the cash funds. So in supplies, we include some of these smaller stormwater projects, such as our right-of-way green infrastructure projects. And then in other services, that's up 147.3%. We're transferring 5% of the interdepartmental from water to storm as well. Also, keep in mind that these percentages are really large because the numbers are smaller than in water and sewer. All right, into our goals. Our first goal is to improve and reimagine the customer assistance program. We've already done some changes to our customer assistance program to widen the net. So to be eligible for our assistance program, the household income needed to be at or below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. We've now expanded that up to 300%. And we are now in 2025 doing the harder work to explore how to remove the barriers in our current customer assistance program. Right now we have barriers such as the requirement to pay your current bill. It is our belief that, and my belief, that if you are at the point where you're asking for assistance, perhaps you cannot pay your current bill. Also, I find it a problem that we have never spent the full $50K that we've allotted to this program, even though we have over 9,000 on average, over 9,000 shutoffs per year. All right. So in 2025, we are going to increase our budget to $100K. Part of this will go towards assistance as we see how our current changes are changing how much interest we have in the program. And then some of this money, hopefully we will also be able to use for research if we need to. All right. Overall, the outcome that we hope to see from this is that we will see a substantial decrease in the number of shutoffs due to delinquency. All right, and then the timeline. In 2025, we'll spend a substantial amount of time on research and development of a program that maintains customer water service while remaining fiscally feasible. We are going to monitor the impacts of the changes that we've made in this year, and we will use those to understand how much of the additional funds we can use for research and development. And then we will continue to partner with SCAP on this program. All right, goal 2. We are going to contribute to local nonprofits to protect and preserve critical water resources. Essentially, we're going to contribute $25K again to Friends of Lake Monroe and the Lake Monroe Water Fund. For Friends of Lake Monroe, this is going to help them fund a watershed coordinator who's going to implement a lot of these programs that help preserve our watershed. The Lake Monroe Water Fund leverages contributions to secure additional funding to help fund shovel-ready conservation projects within the watershed. Total budget impact will be $50K, 25 each. And both of these organizations will present their work annually at a regular public meeting of the Utility Service Board. Okay, again, each contribution will happen annually. Our partners in this are Friends of Lake Monroe and the Lake Monroe Water Fund. We've also been collaborating with ESD on programs and project specifics. All right, our goal 3, to upgrade and replace critical water infrastructure. This all has to do with both improvements at Monroe and in our distribution system. we are essentially doing two projects. One project will be the chemical feed line project and tank upgrades. And then the other project will be improvements to our South Central and West booster stations. The West booster station upgrades will cost $2.2 million. The South Central booster station upgrades will be $5.4 million. And then the chemical feed line replacement and tank upgrades will be $3 million. The outcome of this project is that all the chemical treatment processes at Monroe will have redundant and safe lines that will ensure the continued water treatment without interruption. And by the end of 2025, we hope to see that the West booster station is fully restored to full function. By the end of 2025, we will have the designs and improvements for the West and South Central booster stations, depending on funding, whether or not we start these South Central booster station improvements. All right. Again, timeline. The West booster station should be done by, designs will be done by early 2025, and the West booster station construction will start in 2025. The chemical feed line replacement project, the construction will begin in 2025. The project is set to bid in November of this year. As far as partners for the booster station work, Commonwealth Engineering is doing the design, and Kokosing Contractors is doing the construction. And for the chemical feed line and tank upgrades, we are partnering with Donahue Engineering for design and F.A. William for construction management. Sorry. All right. Our fourth goal is to keep up with the costs of operating and maintaining water service. This essentially is the rate case. We have a goal to have a successful rate case by the end of 2025. I don't know if I have to stress to this board why we need that. I think it's important to have this as a goal in our budget because it comes with substantial legal and accounting costs, which are $489,000. The rate case will reflect this comprehensive water CIP that Wessler is performing currently, and that is based on that system-wide asset inventory. And then this new rate case will allow us to keep up with project costs. The timeline for the rate case. We're currently working on the rate case and anticipate submission to the IURC by the end of 2024. We ideally hope that the approval will happen mid-2025 and that any approved bonds in that rate case will be able to be secured by the end of 2025. The rate itself, the rate increases would go into effect January 1st, 2026. We are partnering with Crow to determine how those costs would impact future rates and with Stantec to assess the cost of current operations. Discussions will be ongoing with IU and our wholesale customers, and there will soon be public input opportunities and outreach that is anticipated this fall. All right. This speaks to improvements at Dillman Road. We're going to begin construction of capacity improvements to achieve the 19 million gallons per day rating to accommodate growth in the city. This design will also include safety improvements at the plant. Yes, the need is to improve capacity to promote growth of the city. And also it'll address some safety concerns that were brought up by staff. This project will cost $6 million. As far as outputs and outcomes, once the capacity improvements at the plant are in place to reach that 19 MGD, CBU will attempt to reach 20 MGD through data collection and reporting as suggested by IDEM. And then the infrastructure at Dillman will be safer and more reliable for our staff. For our timeline for that, design completion is anticipated by the end of the year, with construction beginning in 2025. We're currently working with Greeley and Hansen on the engineering component of the capacity and safety project designs. Our sixth goal is at Blucher Pool. SCADA and HMI upgrades are currently in design and will be implemented in 2025. Plant capacity and process evaluations that will lead to increased reliability and resilience, along with a variety of plant improvements, are included. So the big need here is that the current SCADA and HMI systems at Blucher are obsolete. Updates and replacement parts are not available. These SCADA improvements will not only bring us up to modern technology, it will also increase the cybersecurity at the plant, which is a larger concern at water treatment plants right now. So there's also a separate component here of the, there's a design for plant hydraulic expansion and improvements for the plant's needs. So what this will do is we'll determine the plant needs to upgrade current equipment and processes to anticipate higher flows at Blucher. This will be informed by a capacity study that's currently ongoing. So the budget impact for the SCADA and HMI upgrades is $560,000. And for the process and capacity improvements, it's $1.1 million. Some of the outputs and outcomes for that, the SCADA and HMI systems will be renewed for another 20-year lifespan. The system instrument renewal and additions will increase productivity at the plant with increased automation and more efficient labor. Blucher will be now operating at full capacity with greater efficiency to accommodate future growth. And Blucher will have increased reliability and resilience. The SCADA and HMI upgrades, the design for them are 90% complete, with the project bid scheduled for fall of 2024. The goal for project completion is anticipated by the end of 2025. Excuse me, sorry. The current capacity study that I mentioned will be completed by the end of this year. Once that study is complete, this will inform the design of the process and capacity improvements. Any upgrades that are identified in this would not be under construction until 2026. So the partners that we have for the SCADA upgrades are the City ITS Department and Wessler Engineering. For the process and capacity evaluation study, we are working with Black & Veatch and Commonwealth Engineering. The timeline, sorry, it got cut. The timeline for the SCADA and HMI upgrades, we already did this, I think. Yeah, we're just gonna boop on down to goal 7. Sorry. All right. Goal 7 has to do with our collection system. So we are going to continue our sewer lining projects, and we are going to begin the construction of a relief sewer capacity improvement that runs from Dillman Wastewater Treatment Plant to Rogers Street. So the need for sewer lining helps provide capacity for the Westgate on 3rd development. It also helps prevent SSOs. Both of these projects help prevent sanitary sewer overflows. The Dillman Road Wastewater Treatment Plant relief sewer capacity improvements will be approximately 3,300 feet of 54-inch diameter pipe. This will, again, provide additional capacity and help to eliminate sanitary sewer overflows. All right, the budget impact for sewer lining projects is $500,000. And for the sewer relief project, that will be $2.9 million in design, and then $15.1 million for construction. All right. And then the timeline for that is that the design for the sewer relief is slated for the end of 2024, and we have a goal of beginning construction in late 2025. The sewer lining project is ongoing, with expected completion for this project to be summer of 2025. For plans, partners, and public input, we are working with Commonwealth Engineering for the modeling and design of the sewer relief project. All right. Goals 8 and 9. These are our stormwater goals. So our first stormwater goal is to increase resiliency to large storm events and improve stormwater quality through nature-based solutions. Essentially what this means is we would like to construct regional green detention facilities in regions that currently lack detention. We have the goal of funding green infrastructure in greenway right-of-way projects and beginning preliminary designs and concept renderings for a bioretention wetland complex at the southern end of the underground portion of Clear Creek. The need for this is just, large storm events continue to increase with frequency intensity as our climate continues to change. Many of the projects that we've done are very successful at conveying stormwater away from key flooding areas, but it's also our responsibility to address detention of stormwater as the solution that mitigates flooding versus moving it downstream. So, and also it's important to remember that we house the MS4 program that is charged with programming, I'm tired, implementing projects, programs, and policies that improve the water quality of runoff that is generated within our MS4 boundary. All right, so we have three components of that, 3 projects. The first is the Clear Creek Bioretention Facility preliminary designs and renderings. We are not sure exactly how much this would cost, but it is not to exceed $500,000. The regional detention facilities that we do have designs for are estimated to cost $310,000. Our Greenway right-of-way green infrastructure program, we are allocating $60,000 towards. The outputs and outcomes for this is that by the end of 2025, we hope to have constructed 2 bioretention facilities that will detain up to 71,874 cubic feet of runoff in a 25-year storm. Both of these planned facilities are located in the Clear Creek watershed. CBU will continue to work with city engineering to implement green infrastructure and right-of-way greenway projects such as the West Allen Rain Gardens that were recently built. And then CBU will send out an RFQ early 2025 for designs and renderings of a large bioretention wetland complex to be located downstream of the underground portion of Clear Creek. Timeline for all of this, we can be more specific about the bioretention construction projects. One of them is currently in the public feedback phase with the goal of construction starting at the beginning of 2025. Construction of the second project has a goal of being constructed in the late summer, fall of 2025. This is pending a positive project status letter from the IFA Indiana Brownfields program. The right-of-way green infrastructure improvements are done on an annual basis. We anticipate supporting another project next year. And then the RFQ for designs and renderings for the Clear Creek Bioretention Wetland Complex will go out in the first quarter of 2025 with the goal of having deliverables later in the year. as far as our plans, partners, and public input, the green infrastructure right-of-way projects are in partnership with city engineering. Facilitating and supporting design and implementation of low-impact development and green infrastructure in the right-of-way projects is an implementation item in the Stormwater Master Plan. So we are continuing to implement the Stormwater Master Plan. We've had public meetings on the bioretention facilities, and we will continue to have public meetings as we progress with the plans for our bioretention facilities. And then the renderings and designs for this bioretention wetland complex, once we have them, they will be presented to the USB and to the public as they become available. CBU will partner with other departments, including planning and engineering, to ensure that this design meets the broader goals of the city. We will absolutely be soliciting public input on all of these renderings and designs. Our second stormwater goal is to inventory and assess existing and rehabilitate critical stormwater infrastructure. One of the goals is to develop a jurisdiction-wide stormwater system management and maintenance plan that will include a watershed master plan and a climate adaptation analysis. We will also be rehabilitating limestone arches on Spakers Branch and the West Fork of Spakers Branch. So the need for this is we don't currently have a hydrological model for all of the watersheds and subwatersheds in the MS4. We do for Clear Creek. We have had modeling done that has informed some of our projects, but not holistically over our entire MS4 boundary. We believe this is crucial for developing capital improvement projects that will have the greatest impact on mitigating flooding and improving water quality. Then the repairs that we are proposing for the arches in Spakers Branch and the West Fork of Spakers Branch are necessary because if failure at these limestone arches were to occur, it could be disastrous to the surrounding infrastructure, like roads, sidewalks, etc. For the system-wide management and maintenance plan, we have budgeted $185,000. For the limestone arch repairs, we have budgeted $400,000. The outcomes of this is that the system-wide assessment will provide a proactive maintenance and management plan. The assessment will also lead to a watershed master plan and a climate adaptation analysis, which will guide our CIP projects and system upgrades. The arches in question will have engineering assessments performed on them, which will indicate the severity of the deterioration, and we will use that to prioritize the highest risk arches. Timeline for the system-wide assessment RFQ is that it will be put out towards the end of this year or the beginning of next year. Next year will be the first year in what will be a multi-year process of this evaluation. And then the design for the rehabilitation of these arches will be completed in 2025 with the goal of beginning construction in late 2025. As far as plans, the system-wide assessment and prioritization plan is a specific implementation item that was in our stormwater master plan. And then we will obviously make sure that we notify residents of any rehabilitation actions of those arches that may impact surrounding residents. Okay, conclusion. This budget request from the City of Bloomington Utilities allows us to provide safe, sustainable, and high-quality drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater services in a cost-effective manner, promoting public health, economic vitality, and environmental stewardship. Thank you for your consideration. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Questions? Yes, Amanda.
Please.
Okay. I have a couple questions. What is the logic of the ordering of these goals?
So, the logic of so they're not ordered by priority.
Okay.
There's not really a chronological or prioritization of these goals. When we adapted our memo, which we had presented to you earlier, they were kind of in categories. One of the categories was community contributions, waterworks, sewer works, stormwater. And so they just are kind of still in that grouping. So the first few were those community contributions, the next was waterworks, then sewer works, and then stormwater.
While I'm very supportive of community contributions, I think I think it's just you look at things on a list, and number one should be one of the highest priorities. That's, the way I think as humans we sometimes look at things. And so I don't know if there's any ability to put some of those other things at the forefront, just from the aspect that we've got to have strong infrastructure. We have to have this rate case go through. There are some things that, to me, just again, take it for what it is. That is important. That is important, but I think we ought to look at putting some of our these higher priced, stronger priorities up front. That's just a comment. And just to confirm too, we don't work on a fiscal year. We work on a calendar budget year.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to confirm that. And one thing that is lacking, and I don't know if it's because we don't have answers or what, but there's nothing in here about the new service center anywhere. Even if we're having to set aside budget money for what's been discussed. So I don't know if that falls outside of budget, or I don't understand.
It kind of does. So we have money that if we do go forward with that project, that we will have to spend to finish the design. And then after the design is finished, and we'll have to go out and do Winston Thomas specific bond to pay for it. So it won't come out of the actual budget.
So the money that we have already set aside is someplace else?
Well, that part of the finishing the design is in the budget. What I'm saying is actual construction of the building will have to be a separate bond that we issue.
Okay, so it's not a goal.
So as far as it being a goal in this year's budget, realistically looking at the water rate case, we would not be able to take, and I don't know if I explained it very well last time, but we very realistically won't be able to take any action on the Winston Thomas Service Center until at the very, very earliest, the end of 2025. But even that is relatively unrealistic. So I think looking at the Winston Thomas Service Center, it not being in this budget doesn't mean it's off the table. I think it's more realistic to put it in the 2026 budget.
And we won't, I guess, are we not anticipating any future expenses for that in this next year?
Finish the design if we choose to go forward with the project. But again, if we decide to build the building, we will have to borrow money to do that.
Well, even the design though, like the very earliest we could see.
My question is, I understand the rate case, I understand that. We are not budgeting any additional money to put in any more money into the concept of a service center in this next budget year.
We would be able
Correct.
to finish the design, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We won't be, okay, that's what I,
So all the dollars are already allocated in 2024 and no 2025 budget.
There's
money
some
to
that's
be
carrying
spent.
over.
Okay, so I think maybe even if it's like at the beginning when you started off in the hound sniffing sewers, whatever they do, like, to say that, because those
Okay.
same 2 points that Amanda's made are my 2 points. Where's anything about the new service center? Just because that's been such a discussion of ours for years, when we're talking, going back to the time that it took for these people to come up here and appeal to us tonight. How many years I've been on this board for years, and we've been talking about this service center ever since then, and how the construction costs have doubled, and now we're in this design phase, and now we're gonna be put off for another 2 years. So I can see how it would take them that long to get here. And so I definitely think something needs to be mentioned about it, just because it's such a focus of ours and our staff's time. So somehow, and not to take over, sorry,
no,
but
I mean,
same
it's-
points, yeah.
we've spent a significant amount of money on this in the past, and again, this is not, I mean, this is, we have spent a significant amount of money as a board and approved a significant amount of money. To not have anything in here about it, I think is a slap on our face. I apologize, but I just, there's nothing in here about it. And we've spent hours, money, time discussing it. And even if anything, it's to bring it to the attention of the mayor that you guys have also spent an incredible amount of time on this.
Yeah.
So those are my questions and comments.
And since I've touched on, I'll just mention, I also, I wondered the order of things and agree that our most impactful items should be first. They're our biggest expenditures. When I looked at it, if you, that's what I think. Thank you. Okay, other comments? Yes. Oh, sorry, looking the wrong way.
It's all right, I'll just ask, assuming we take a look at some of these contingencies and improvements we may need to make for large storm resiliency in terms of generator capacity and managing power outages and things like that. If we got some flexibility in here in our capital budget that we can make some improvements if we need to before 26.
So I think some of that will be captured in operations and maintenance, which wasn't really lined out in the goals. But yes, we do have budget for operations and maintenance of our generators, for doing some of those kinds of improvements.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Two questions. One, the sewer relief project with the upgrade to the 54-inch main from Rogers to Dillman. In the discussions about the Summit development, there was a mention of a $25 million project that was connected to that, but separate from, because they talked about it being 25 million. Summit would pony up 5 million of that. That was allocated to them as their contribution in the increased capacity.
Yeah.
Two different projects though, right, we're talking about?
I believe so. I'll
Phil?
check with Phil.
Just want to be clear.
Yes, so it is part of that project. It is an opportunity to increase the sewer size, to eliminate SSOs, and to provide for future development. So it would be Summit's the first one down the block, but then it'll be a lot of other developments coming forward that are contributing to that sewer system. Would also, they would go into an MOU with the Utility Service Board to pay their share. So it was a $45 million, and their share was $5 million.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
this is phase one.
I'd
So
heard
there's-
different numbers
yeah.
thrown around. So this is phase one,
Phase one
18
of-
million of the 45 overall.
Correct.
But the other part of that extends out to the west, up the West Clear Creek.
The other part of
This.
the phase
this
two.
yeah, like phase two.
Phase two is actually, it would be pumps at the plant.
Oh, okay.
And it's, yeah, so, and up to the east as well, so that we can handle the flow.
Okay,
I think
so
it- but
this is
it's-
one and the same. All right, I understand now.
Yeah.
And the second question is, when you mentioned two RFQs, one for the system-wide assessment of stormwater, the other RFQ for the Clear Creek bioretention, and then you say downstream of the, the mouth there at Rallies is the way we
Yeah.
refer to it, most people do.
Yeah. At the mouth
So,
of the Rallies.
But the specific location, is that already known? Because if this is a request for quotations, then obviously there'd be a lot of plans involved. If it's a request for qualification queue, then it's different. Which is it, and do we know do we have a prospective location already?
So I did leave that verbiage intentionally vague, because I would like to encourage whoever wins the RFQ to explore multiple options and multiple locations.
So it's a qualifications queue?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
that
you.
is a qualifications
Okay,
queue.
all right, that makes a lot more sense. And then one of these regional regional detention basins, is that South Downs Sheridan project?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Other questions or comments? Okay, so, and your presentation is on the 19th, the 20th?
This,
The 29th.
the budget memo is due to council on the 19th.
Okay.
And then our presentation is scheduled for the 22nd, and we are at the very end, so stay tuned.
And so this was a draft tonight?
It's here for approval.
Oh.
This is for your review and approval.
Why, I mean, I agree with this idea of moving the smaller line items as
Yeah.
1, 2, down to the bottom. When I read it, that was my same take. If it's a draft or we could approve it with that revision, that would be, I think, at least 3 of us are saying that.
Yeah, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong.
Approving the numbers, this is the budget, you know, how it gets organized and presented to council can certainly be modified with the great recommendations being made by this board and from staff after they've heard it being presented. I'm sure that things will get shifted around, but the numbers will stay the same. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think you could, say with recommendations from the board. Improve it with recommendations from the board. And again, apologies. I very much wish that you were able to see this format earlier.
That's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on, and we appreciate you having it. You did a great job tonight, so thank you.
So to that end, I'll go back to my question about the service center. Can something be added? I
Yes.
know it's not going to tie up dollars, is what I'm hearing. It's not tying up any dollars this next year. But it's okay to put it, I think it's okay to put it in there that we are not requesting any money, but this is a major project that we have spent a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of staff resources on, that remains in the balance of what's happening. And that and then it's a goal, I think, for us to have answers in this next year.
I agree.
Can it be listed as a goal even if it doesn't have any dollars attached to it?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I know it's a budget, but.
My first thought and suggestion of how to incorporate it is to incorporate it into one of our customer service goals and maybe adjust one of those goals to be broader to customer service. The idea behind these, the goal is customer service, and then Winston Thomas can be one of the points of how we achieve greater customer service.
But it's not just customer service.
Yeah.
It's the protection of our assets.
Yes.
It's at least what's been sold to us, is having everybody under one roof.
Yes.
And having a cohesive staff. And having our equipment safe and our team safe. So
Yeah.
it goes to that as well. At least that's, again, what's been sold to us.
Yes.
Quick follow-up question. Thank you, Director Zeiger. I know the format, just informed by the council president recently that there was some work with the mayor's office to adjust the format and the schedule a bit in terms of this year's budget hearings for the council. But my recollection is that typically there's some type of incorporation of previous year's goals as well. Is that part of what's planned to be presented to the council? And is that a suitable place to bring in that topic as well? I mean, I can also commit to asking about it for the benefit of the public and the council in 2 weeks. But yeah, just curious if things that are longer in time scale or kind of in motion like that have a place in the presentations we'll hear.
Yeah, I think it was difficult to make that adjustment into the new template because the new memo template, I think the idea is to face forward, and I don't believe there is a section in the memo that is dedicated to previous projects, previous goals, where, as in the past there was. But I know that in our presentation template, there is an opportunity to talk about opportunities and successes. We could also bring it up during our opportunities
Good.
and successes.
I just don't want you to not have that opportunity in a public forum to bring this up, that we have spent significant resources exploring this, and that we are on hold, and that we're not going to spend any more money this next year until answers are given.
Yeah, I think that's really appropriate, and I really appreciate this input, as this has definitely been a collection of many things.
The rehabilitation.
Yes.
The site plan.
Yes.
The new flood boundary. I mean, all these things are positive things that you can cite and we can talk about.
Yeah.
But you can say, you know, for right now, that's on hold pending taking care of these larger goals we
Yeah.
have.
So one last thing about that is just, I do think it's important that it's in print somewhere rather than just what we're saying, just because if someone's not listening to the budget hearing, but they see a memo or they see the presentation, the PowerPoint, then they see that in text.
Yes.
So that
I
would be
will
my last thing I'd say on that.
absolutely put it in
Thank you.
text.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the 2025 budget recommendation with the addition of the service center and all that entails, and the tweaking the order, and, yes. I think there might have been something else.
I move, I so moved.
Yes, so moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have old business. Is there any old business from the board? Old business from staff?
No,
New business from the board? New business from staff?
no.
Staff reports?
Yes. We do have a staff report. We would like to welcome Renee Abram, a new communications operator, and Drew Hayes, a new utility specialist 1. We'd also like to congratulate Jason Paget, who just obtained his wastewater plant operator 1 certification, and Cassandra Allen, who just completed her WT5.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Congratulations. Are there any other petitions and communications? I'm just going to say one last thing. Sorry. Okay, but you can get up and leave if you need to. I just want to say I appreciate everybody's time tonight. This is by far our longest meeting, by far our most discussion. I think, and the only time we've ever had more than one person vote opposite of the group. And I think when we're when I took the role as president, I wanted to make our mission at the forefront of our meetings every time. You have these little pledges that this is the Girl Scout pledge, I guess, or other groups that I'm in, their Bloomington Tri Kappa. We say our pledge to start our meetings, and you think about what's your focus of being here every time. So that's why I like to do that. And I know that all of us, while we may have different opinions on whatever that outcome should be, that we each have the best interest of our customers and our staff and our community in mind. And so I just wanted to say that. And with nothing else, then this meeting, do we have a motion for adjournment? Thank you. All right, good night.